Hello students, welcome to all in this virtual classes. This class is meant for the BA first year students. The title of the paper is The Structure of English. In this video, we will learn place and manner of articulation. The place of articulation refers to that area in one of the resonating cavities like larynx and mouth muscles where the articulators are opposing same kind of structure or obstacle to the passing of air. The manner of articulation refers to the way the articulators are set so that the resonance effect is possible. Consonants place. In articulatory phonetics, the place of articulation of a consonant is the point of the contact whose an obstruction occurs in the vocal tract between an articulator and passive location. Along with the manner of articulation and phonation, it gives the consonant its distinctive sound. In this slide, we will see the various types of labels. First one is the bilabial. Do you know students what does mean bilabial? When both the lips touch to each other. When both the lips touch to each other is called bilabial. Suppose for example when we pronounce the sound of p and b, just we can examine that while pronouncing the p and b sound are both lips touch to each other, so this sound is called bilabial. Next label is a labiodental. When upper teeth and lower lip touch, when upper teeth and lower lip touch to each other, that is called labiodental. When we pronounce the sound of f, we can examine that our upper teeth and lower lip touch to each other. So you also try that while pronouncing the sound of f, our upper teeth and lower lip touch to each other. Next one is dental. When the blade of the tongue touches to the upper teeth. When the blade of the tongue touches to the upper teeth is called dental. When we pronounce the particular sound of th and the, we can examine that the blade of the tongue touches upper teeth. Just you also try to pronounce the sound of th and the, you will examine the blade of the tongue is touching to the upper teeth. Next one is a alveolar. When the blade of the tongue touches to the teeth ridge is called alveolar. Suppose when we pronounce the word of a t, at that time we can examine the blade of the tongue is touching to the teeth ridge. Next one is the post alveolar. When the blade of the tongue is very near to the teeth ridge but does not touch it, that is called post alveolar. Suppose for example the sound of r, when we pronounce the r sound, at that time we can examine that our blade of the tongue is very near to the teeth ridge but does not touch it. Next one is a palate alveolar. When the front of the palatoalveolar, when the front of the tongue raised to the hard palate is called palatoalveolar. Suppose for example the sound of ts, when we pronounce the ts, we can see the front of the tongue raised to the hard palate. Next one is a palatal. When the front of the tongue raised toward the hard palate is called palatal. When the front of the tongue raised towards the hard palate, that is called palatal. When we pronounce the word of y, at that time we can examine that front of the tongue is raising towards the hard palate. Next one is the velar. When the back of the tongue touches soft palate. When the back of the tongue touches to the soft palate is called velar. When we pronounce the sound of k, just you try to pronounce k sound, we will see that the back of the tongue touching to the soft palate. What does mean the soft palate? It is called padjib in Marathi. So when we just, you also try that while pronouncing k sound, the back of the tongue touching to the soft palate. Next one is the glottal. When no mouth organ participate in the articulation, when no mouth organ participate in the articulation is called glottal. For example, when we pronounce the sound of a and h, we can examine that no mouth organ is participating in the articulation. Next one is the nasal. When the air is released through the nose is called nasal. When we pronounce the sound of m and n, at that time we can examine that the air is released through the nose. Here is a chart that I have explained or illustrated in the earlier slides. That is, the first one is the bilabial. The sound of the bilabial is b and p. You know very well that bilabial means when the both the lips touch to each other. That is called bilabial label. When we try to pronounce b, p and m and v, these four sounds, at the time we can examine that our both lips are touching to each other. That b and p is a plosive and nasal is the m and v. Next one is the labiodental. When upper teeth and lower lip touch to each other is called labiodental. When we pronounce the f and v, at that time we can examine that. The upper teeth and lower lip is touching to the each other. Next one is the dental. When the blade of the tongue touches to the upper teeth is called dental. When we pronounce the sound of th and the, we can examine the blade of the tongue is touching to the upper teeth. Next one is the alveolar. Alveolar is the blade of the tongue touches to the teeth ridge. That is called alveolar. Means when we pronounce the word like t, d, z, s, n, l, these all sounds are alveolar sounds. Next one is the post alveolar. When the blade of tongue is very near to the teeth ridge but does not touch it, that is called post alveolar. When we pronounce the word or a sound of a r, at that time what happens? Blade of the tongue is very near to the teeth ridge but does not touch it. Next one is the palatoalveolar. When the front of the tongue raised to the hard palate, when we try to pronounce the word like ch, j, sh, these all sounds when we pronounce, at that time front of the tongue raised to the hard palate. Next one is the palatal. When the front of the tongue raised towards the hard palate is called palatal. When we pronounce the word like ear, we can examine and we can see that the front of the tongue raised towards the hard palate. Next one is the velar. When the back of the tongue touches soft palate is called velar, and when we pronounce the particular sound of k and g, we can examine the back of the tongue is touching to the soft palate. Then next one is the velar. When we pronounce or when the back of the tongue touches to the soft palate, that is velar. And glottal, then k and g. When we pronounce the k and g, at that time we can examine that back of the tongue touches to the soft palate. Next one is the glottal. No mouth organ participate in the articulation. Means when we pronounce the h and a sound, at that time we can examine that no mouth organ participate in the articulation. Thank you students. I hope you have understood this video very well. If you are not able to understand, you can review the same video. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.